Hello YouTube, Dave here again. Welcome back to our series on the Paladin class through the ages. We have already taken a look at the OD&D or Zero Edition version of the Paladin class, as well as the first and second edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Paladin. But today we are taking a look at the 3.0 version of the Paladin class. In third edition, the Paladin would gain one of its more iconic class features, at least compared to the base core player's handbook versions of the Paladin class that we saw before. So let's just go ahead and dive right into it, shall we? So we're going to open up this book. This is actually my original player's handbook all the way back from the year 2000. So I've had this one for almost 24 years at this point, which is kind of crazy to think of. Also kind of crazy to think that I can manage to choke on nothing, but I managed to pull it off. All right, so the Paladin class, a few interesting things here for the 3.0 version here. Number one, the alignment still requires you to play a lawful good character. So this is something that's been consistent with the Paladin class all throughout its tenure, throughout the various editions of Dungeons & Dragons. But that might be changing in the near future, so stay tuned to future videos for that. The paladins aren't necessarily devoted to a specific deity, but they should be devoted to like the cause of righteousness in of itself, if nothing else. We do also have the fact that any race can now play a paladin in 3rd edition, because 3rd edition got rid of the idea of the demi-human races only being able to advance to certain points in certain classes. There's no more level restrictions, and there's no more racial restrictions for your character classes. It does mention humans right off the bat as being a great suit for paladins, but they also talk about, dwarven paladins, elven paladins, half-elven paladins, all kinds of stuff like that. And the Hero Builder's Guidebook also has information on role-playing a paladin for each of the main player's handbook races. So we do have that. Now, for the game rule information, ability scores, so they do say that charisma is very important to the paladin. So charisma is something that was always kind of an underused or like a dump stat back in the day, since it really only affected hirelings. But here, it actually affects a decent amount of the paladin's abilities. So the paladins gets a healing ability that is dependent on their charisma modifier, as well as their turning undead feature, which they also gain. Strength is important for the paladin because of their role in combat, specifically melee combat, because they are not necessarily meant to be the most dexterous characters. And they do mention that you do want a wisdom score of anywhere between 11 and 14 for another feature that we'll talk about here in just a moment. So the Paladin class is proficient with the simple and martial weapons, and they're proficient with all types of armor and shields. Now, they are a sort of a holdover of the older versions of D&D where the Paladin was like a subclass of fighter. Now they're not necessarily tied to that class, but they still have the armor and weapon proficiencies of the fighter. They also have a good base attack progression. So you can see here their base attack actually increases at every level, starting at +1 at first level and getting all the way up to +20 at 20th level. And every time they reach a 6 or an 11 or 6 or 1, I guess, basically, they get to add an extra attack to their attacks per round if they take a full round action. So at 6th level, they gain a second attack with a +1 base attack bonus. At 11th level, they gain a third attack, with their attacks being at +11, +6, and +1. And then at level 16, they have their 4 attacks per round, with their first attack having a base attack bonus of +16, +11 for their second attack, +6 for the third, and +1 for their fourth. Truthfully, that fourth attack really isn't likely to hit. And when you get up to higher levels, it's just something where you're just kind of hoping for that natural 20. Now, in addition to that, you would obviously add your strength modifier for melee weapons or your dexterity modifier for ranged weapons, and some other bonuses that you might get for feats and for like magic bonuses for your weapons. Now, at level 1, they have a +2 bonus in their fortitude saving throw, and their reflex and will saves are considered to be their poor saves, meaning that they will have a lesser progression with their fortitude save getting up to plus 12 as a bonus on top of your constitution modifier and other modifiers that you might get for certain feats or other abilities, with their fortitude or their reflex and will only getting up to plus 6 for the base save. Now, at level 1, they also gain Detect Evil, Divine Grace, Lay on Hands, and Divine Health. So, Detect Evil, at will, the Paladin can detect evil as a spell-like ability, which duplicates the effect of the spell Detect Evil. Effectively, it's similar to what they had before, where they can detect the presence of evil in sort of a cone shape in front of them. I think it's a 60-foot cone in 3rd edition D&D. And they could do that at will, so an unlimited number of times per day. Divine Grace allows a paladin to apply their charisma modifier, if positive, as a bonus to all of their saving throws. So in addition to their base save and the normal attribute bonus that they would gain, so like your fortitude would have constitution, reflex would use your dexterity, and will would use your wisdom. You can also add your charisma modifier, which is actually not bad because, again, charisma is kind of important. As we can see with Lay on Hands, a paladin can heal wounds by touch. Each day, she can cure a total number of hit points equal to her charisma bonus, if any, times her level. For example, a 7th level paladin with a 16 charisma, which has a plus 3 bonus, may cure up to 21 hit points of damage. The paladin can cure herself. She may choose to divide the curing among multiple recipients, and she doesn't have to use it all at once. Lay on Hands is a spell-like ability who uses a standard action. So that's actually kind of interesting, because in the past, the paladin had a cure ability, or like a Lay on Hands type ability, which was just a static 2 points of damage per paladin level. But they had to use it all at once. So you couldn't divide it up amongst multiple targets, or you couldn't say just, use a couple of points on one character and then hours later after another fight use a few more points on another. In the older versions of the D&D, you had to use it all at once, and it was a fixed amount, right? So 2 points at first level, 4 points at second level, and so on and so forth. But with charisma actually being useful to the paladin, whereas before there had to be one of their highest attributes, because it used to be need a 17 to be a paladin, but it really didn't do anything other than hirelings and henchmen's loyalty modifiers. Here, your charisma can actually affect your character's abilities, which, if nothing else, it makes the charisma wanting to put a higher number in there worthwhile. And as somebody who recently made a paladin, who completely forgot that it was based on their charisma, and I thought it was just like their wisdom times their level. I was in for a bit of a rude awakening when I read that ability. Luckily, I think I was able to reset the stats a little bit, because we hadn't actually started playing the character at that point in time. But yeah, so there we go. So we got our Lay on Hands ability, and then for Divine Health, a paladin. Oh, sorry. There's actually more stuff here for the paladin. So alternatively, the paladin can use any or all of these points to deal damage to undead creatures. Okay. Because it's a healing effect, positive energy. The paladin could lay on hands onto an undead to deal damage to it. Divine Health, paladin is immune to all diseases, including magical diseases such as mummy rot and lycanthropy. Something that, once again, they were not immune to in the AD&D versions of the paladin class. In AD&D, the paladins were immune to all diseases, but the books had specified that things like mummy rot and lycanthropy were technically curses and not diseases, whereas in 3rd edition, they have become a sort of magical disease, which is a different classification, but the paladin is actually immune to that. At 2nd level, the paladin gains the Aura of Courage and Smite Evil abilities. So Aura of Courage, beginning at 2nd level, a paladin is immune to fear, magical or otherwise. Allies within 10 feet of the paladin gain a +4 morale bonus on saving throws against fear effects. Granting the morale bonus to allies is a supernatural ability. So, like dragons, for example, just have an aura of fear that I always forget to use, especially like back in my 3rd edition days. So the paladin would actually come in really handy in like a dragon hunting group. So, or other things can cause fear as well. Now, Smite Evil. Smite Evil is another thing that is a ability that I just always thought the paladins had, because I never really made one or played one in AD&D. And I never really read the class all that thoroughly because honestly I wasn't interested in playing a paladin back then. But from going through the video series so far, this is the first edition that actually has that ability. So once per day, a paladin of second level or higher may attempt to smite evil with one normal melee attack. She adds her charisma modifier if positive to the roll and deals 1 point of additional damage per paladin level. For example, a 13th level Paladin armed with a longsword would deal 1d8 plus 13 points of damage, plus any additional bonuses for high strength or magical effects. That would normally apply. If the Paladin accidentally smites a creature that is not evil, the smite has no effect but is still used up for the day. Smite evil is a supernatural ability. So again, we're going to see how this ability evolves over time, but in 3rd edition, you had to declare it before you rolled the attack. So this wasn't a situation where you could wait to see if you hit or not before you burn your once per day smite undead ability. But here if you miss or if you hit a non-evil creature, then that feature is just simply used up for the day. And here it looks like they only get it once per day, which is kind of interesting. I don't see anything about them adding like additional uses. So as you go up, I do think there were feats in future releases, like the Defenders of the Faith book, I believe, had stuff for paladins, and they may have had a feat called extra smiting. I don't even know, maybe it's even in the player's handbook. I'll check that real quick here to give them like additional uses of that. But it's interesting that in 3.0, they only gain smite evil once per day. Now, here at 3rd level, a paladin gains the ability to turn undead as well as remove disease. So beginning at 3rd level, the paladin can remove disease as the spell remove disease once per week. She can use this ability more often as she advances in levels, twice per week at 6th level, 3 times per week at 9th level, and so forth. So it gets up to 6 times per week that you can remove disease. But again, what's interesting about this is that it's now a 3rd level paladin ability, whereas before I think they were starting off with it as a 1st level ability. And considering that remove disease is a single target spell in 3rd edition, and you can only do it once per week, it's just never something that I found to be all that useful as a paladin. It's, could be great if your players get, your party members get infected with something like filth fever or something along those lines. But truthfully, I always found remove disease to be really underwhelming. If it were even something like once per day, or once per day, per like, or a number of times per day equal to your charisma modifier times whatever, then that would be fine, or equal to your charisma modifier, minimum of 1 per day. I think that would still be better, but remove disease just always felt kind of underwhelming. But let me know if you played a 3.0 paladin. Did you actually get to use remove disease, and how did that get incorporated into your games? And then to turn undead, a paladin reaches 3rd level. They gains the ability to turn undead. She may use this ability a number of times equal to her charisma modifier. She turns undead as a cleric 2 levels lower. So this is something that they've had before. They could turn undead as if they were, like, again, a paladin or a cleric of 2 levels lower. So at 3rd level, the turn undead, they would turn as a 1st level cleric. They also get extra turning. So as a feat, paladin may take extra turning. This feat allows a paladin to turn undead 4 more times per day than normal. Paladin could take this feat multiple times, gaining the 4 extra each time. So they don't gain extra turning as like a class feat. It's just something that as they progress in levels, it's just a feat that they are able to choose, which is okay, I guess. And then they get their spell casting ability starting at level 4. And again, this gets really, really underwhelming. We'll come back to this, but at level 4, they actually don't gain a full spell slot. They have 0 spells, but it does allow them to use a bonus spell if their wisdom modifier is high enough. So they need a wisdom modifier, or wisdom score, I should say, of 10 plus the spell level in order to cast a spell at all. So you'd have to have a minimum of an 11 wisdom to be able to cast first level spells. And if you want to get use out of your maximum 4th level spell slots, you have to have a wisdom of 14. Their DCs are also based off of their wisdom score, so 10 plus their wisdom modifier plus the spell level. If you were to use spells with the Paladin, again, kind of an underwhelming feature as well. At 5th level, they gain their special mount, so they can call on an unusually intelligent, strong, and loyal steed to serve her in her crusade against evil. And there's some information here on the Paladin's mount. So as a Paladin advances in level, the mount, which would start as like a regular version of the animal there, it gets an extra hit dice, natural armor, strength adjustment, and an intelligence score, as well as some abilities like improved evasion right away, which means that if they succeed on a reflex saving throw, they take no damage, and if they fail a reflex saving throw against like things like fireball or whatever, they would only take half damage as if they saved normally. So that's pretty good. They get up to plus 8 hit dice at 15th level, 10 natural armor, strength adjustment of plus 4, and an intelligence of 9. Then they have their code of conduct. So a paladin must be of lawful good alignment and loses all special class abilities if they ever willingly commit an act of evil. Additionally, a paladin's code requires that she respect legitimate authority, act with honor, not lying, not cheating, not using poison, etc. Help those who need help, provided they do not use that help to perform evil or chaotic acts, and pursue those that harm or threaten innocence. And then finally, associates. While she may adventure with characters of any good or neutral alignment, a paladin will never knowingly associate with evil characters. A paladin will not continue an association with someone who consistently offends her moral code. A paladin may only hire henchmen or accept followers who are lawful good. So that's something that we've kind of had all the way through so far, is that they will... it kind of loosened up, though, because before, in first edition, they would only travel with non-lawful good characters or non-good characters, like under specific circumstances, to where they would just travel with any non-evil characters. And here, they can travel with any character, but if they find out that one of their party members is evil, or if one of the party members continuously offends the Paladin code of conduct, then they would no longer want to travel with that character. So that is the Paladin class for 3.0. But let's just take a look at that spellcasting again, because I want to take a look at the spell list for the Paladin, just so you can kind of see what we're dealing with here. I know like the Ranger spell list was really sad in that they don't get any cure magic until level 2. Like Cure Light Wounds is a 2nd level Ranger spell. But the Paladin here, the first level, they get Bless, which is not bad. It's a good buff spell, +1 in attacks and saves versus fear. They can Bless Weapons, which is actually a pretty good spell to use. More or less in, particularly in 3.5, where alignment damage reduction becomes a thing. They can make holy water, they can create water. They do get Cure Light Wounds at first level, which is great. But then they also get a few other things here, like Resistance or Virtue, which are 0 level spells for like the cleric, but here it's an actual 1st level spell slot, meaning that you would have to burn your only spell slot if you have a high enough wisdom, starting out, to do like +1 temporary hit point or a +1 bonus on like their next saving throw. That's really kind of underwhelming. So yeah, at 2nd level, they only get 5 spells that they can choose from: Delay Poison, Remove Paralysis, Resist Elements, Shield Other, and Undetectable Alignment, which truthfully, Resist Elements is good, I suppose, but yeah, I don't know. It's just really underwhelming spellcasting options here. Now, if other books would come out that would also give the Paladin, better spells to use, and we'll see a little bit of that in 3.5 with the spell compendium. But for today, that was the Paladin. Oh, I guess I should also mention the skill points, because skills became a major part of the Paladin, or the 3rd edition in general. So they have the lowest number of skill points of like the classes that are out there, tied with like the fighter and a few others. where they get 2 skill points every level plus their intelligence modifier. So again, intelligence isn't a particularly important stat for paladins, so you're not going to be getting a lot of skills. All right, unfortunately. But yeah, it is what it is. The Paladin class 3rd edition is certainly interesting. I genuinely forgot the fact that Smite Evil was just a once per day thing. I really thought they got multiple uses out of it. Again, there was like extra smiting, which I don't think was a feat here. Let's just take a quick look here. We got a little bit of time, I think. So we'll go to the feats. I know there was like in other books that came out, they would have like the extra smiting or extra turn undead stuff here. Let's just actually go into the descriptions here because that would probably make it a little bit easier. Yeah, extra turning. No, nothing for smiting here in 3.0. So yeah, very interesting indeed when it comes to the Paladin class. So yeah, I mean, they get a fighter's attack bonus. They get some good, some good abilities. Like I would say that their being immune to disease is pretty good, considering that it now encompasses things that it never used to, like mummy rot or lycanthropy. I think that's really cool. The detect evil is always fine. The divine grace, adding your charisma modifier to your saving throws, is really good, considering that again, you want a decent charisma because it's also tied to your smite evil and your lay on hands ability, which has been improved, where you can split up your healing so that you don't have to burn it all in a single action. So there's been some good changes to the Paladin class, and some good additions with like the Smite Evil. But there is definitely room for improvement. So we'll see how the Paladin fares when in 2003, 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons undergoes a revision with the release of the 3.5 Player's Handbook. So that'll be the next video in this series. Thank you all so very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Share your 3.0 Paladin memories in the comments below. I always look forward to hearing what you guys have to say. And I will see you all next time. Until then, take care.